guys, and welcome to a new feature on Betwixt the Books called Betwixt the Books Reads, where we discuss a handful of our favorite books, or not so favorite books, in a particular theme. So today we're doing Betwixt the Books Reads Fairy Tale Retellings, and we'll be talking about 4 books apiece that are all fairy tale retellings, and tell you what we thought of it and why we would recommend it or not. And I hope you look forward to it.
So Michaela and I are going to try and do this in a way, well, Michaela is going to, I'm going to vaguely do this, where we go from the book that is closest to the original story and then to the farthest away from it, where it's like loosely based. So I'm going to start with Splintered by A.G. Howard, and this is an Alice in Wonderland. I wouldn't even say retelling. The reason I'm putting it first is because the main character of the story, her name is Alyssa Gardner, but she's descended from Alice Liddell, the person that C.S. Lewis based the original Alice in Wonderland story on. So even though it's not like calling itself necessarily a retelling, it is a retelling because she does go to Wonderland, meets the Mad Hatter, etc. But she is well aware of the original story. I got to read the first book of this, Splintered, as an ARC back when, well, obviously before it came out. And I am not an Alice in Wonderland fan, which you won't guess after this list. But I really, really loved the way A.G. Howard wrote this book, and the story. I was really enthralled. So even if you don't like Alice in Wonderland, A.G. Howard wrote a new Alice in Wonderland story for a new generation that's really engaging and really funny and really great.
The first book that I want to talk to you guys about is actually a collection of short stories by Michael Cunningham called A Wild Swan. It was really quick and really short. I actually read it for my Pop Sugar Challenge on the Fairy Tale Retelling thing. You could probably use any of these books as a Fairy Tale Retelling choice if you're also doing the Pop Sugar Challenge, but that's the one that I chose for mine. It was really interesting in the way that it took one element of a bunch of different basic fairy tales and flipped it on its head. So the one that I'm thinking of is that you read Hansel and Gretel from the perspective of the witch, but in the second person, so you are the witch, in a way. It was weird. They're all interesting like that, a little bit different, but they're the story, just with a slight tweak. So that's why I put it first. It's basically rereading these fairy tales with a slightly different perspective.
So my second choice, which, I don't know, you could technically put it in front of Splintered, I don't know, but it's Frank Bedore's The Looking-Glass Wars. Again, an Alice in Wonderland retelling. I don't know why my list is half those when I don't even like Alice in Wonderland, but I really like these books, so take that what you will. I put it second because even though the premise is that the young Alice, Hart is the name of the main character, escapes Wonderland, befriends Lewis Carroll in Victorian London, tells him her story, and that's how the book is set up. The story that Frank Bedore tells is not at all the story that you would see in the original. Because, like, the Mad Hatter is her bodyguard, and there's a war going on, as you might guess from the Looking-Glass Wars title, and it's a lot more action-packed, and much more closer to an Alice in Wonderland fantasized, like, as in general high fantasy tropes put on top of Alice in Wonderland. So that's probably why I enjoy it more than the actual story. And also, Alice Hart is much more badass than Alice from Alice in Wonderland. So, again, this is another series, and The Looking-Glass Wars is the first one. And I think this is the oldest book on my list, but I remember loving them. And now there's actually graphic novels about the Mad Hatter if you are at all interested. So definitely check that out if that's something that interests you.
My second recommendation is The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman. I picked this up from the library today and read it in one sitting. It is sort of a young adult picture book with all of these interesting black and white drawings, but there's usually an element of gold somewhere hidden in them, so like here you can see the ropes are made of gold. It was really quick. It was sort of a mix between Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. It's the story of Sleeping Beauty, but Snow White makes an appearance in it, and it's sort of discussed her plot a little bit, but it's not actually her plot. It's the Sleeping Beauty story. There was a really interesting twist at the end on how the Sleeping Beauty story happened, and a slight twist on the sleeping spell. Instead of sort of completely sleeping, there's a little bit of like a zombie element. So if you like zombies, or really quick reads, or pretty pictures, I would totally recommend picking up this one.
So my third book I have a physical copy of, and that is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Adia. This was one of my top favorite books of 2015. If Goodreads could count all the times that I reread this in 2015, then I definitely would have beat my reading challenge. And remember, I was like 15 books short on that. That is how many times I've reread this book. It is a retelling of 1001 Nights, the story of Shahrazad, who marries a king who's killing his wives after he marries them, and he's like, so he marries a girl, kills her that night, and no one can figure out why, and Shahrazad is the one that manages to stay alive by telling him the story of Ali Baba and the magic lamp. And this is a retelling of their love story and what happens, and I wasn't going to pick this up. I really wasn't, but I kept hearing really good things about it. I am very susceptible to hype, so I saw it, I kept seeing it. The cover was really pretty. It is, a diverse author, so I was like, fine, I'll pick it up, and I'm so glad I did, because after the new Sarah J. Maas books that come out in 2016, the sequel to this is what I need right now.
My third book is a little bit of a surprise for anybody who knows me. This is Briar Rose by Jane Yolen. I originally read this in high school, and I reread this today as well. It's for my Pop Sugar Challenge of a book that you haven't read since high school. The reason that this is surprising, though, is that it's actually sort of a Holocaust book, and anybody who knows me knows that I hate war books. I hate them so much. I think the reason that I was able to not only, like, really enjoy this one, but not be completely bogged down in, like, anxiety and fear is that it's actually the story of a young girl trying to figure out what happened to her grandmother during the Holocaust instead of a first-person account of what was happening. So she's traveling around and getting stories from people and hearing what was going on in her grandmother's life. And it's a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. Her grandmother used to tell her the story of Briar Rose or Sleeping Beauty, and she really loved it, and she would always say, I am Briar Rose, and you get to figure out over the course of this book why she said that. I also appreciate that this one talks about that it is not only the Jews who were interned during the Holocaust, but homosexuals and any gypsies or Romani people as well. So you get that perspective as well, that it wasn't just Jews. So I really liked that. If you want to check it out, I'd recommend it. It's a young adult book. It was really quick. Give it a try.
So if you didn't miss the fact that Sarah J. Maas would be the only person who could top The Wrath and the Dawn, then you might guess that my final pick is A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I could have literally done this list all on her, since technically her Throne of Glass series was vaguely based off Cinderella, except for what if Cinderella went to the ball to kill the prince instead of marry him. But A Court of Thorn and Roses is even dearer to my heart because it's based off Beauty and the Beast, which is my favorite Disney princess movie of all time. Yes, baggage included, I understand, but whatever. With that in mind, though, Beauty and the Beast retellings are always really hard because you have to get past the Stockholm Syndrome aspect of how that story goes. And Sarah did a really good job with it. It's actually, it's also my last pick because it takes place in the fairy realm. So the Beast is like a fairy who can transform and into a more beast-like shape that looks like a wolf. And so the main character actually has to go stay with him because she took a life She actually kills one of his guardsmen, but you find out there's a lot more to the story than that. I really love this, and I cannot wait for the second book to come out. I've already pre-ordered it. But yeah, I'm a huge Sarah J. Maas fangirl, so of course this also had to be. This had to make my list. It had to.
My last choice is Boy Snowbird by Helen Oyeyemi, and this is a book that has been on my 2BR for so long. I first heard it from Candace at Librarian Fan Mail, and I will put her channel down below, but I put this one last because it isn't a retelling per se, it's more of a use of tropes from fairy tales. So this one is obviously a Snow White retelling. It's not so much a retelling of the actual plot of Snow White as it uses the tropes of like mirrors and a wicked stepmother and beauty and the outside beauty versus inner beauty and all of that. It's put onto a story where a woman marries a man and then gives birth to a African American child and finds out that he and his family have been passing as white, and it goes from there. So to sort of discuss the standards of beauty and passing and whiteness in I think in the 50s and early 60s. So it was interesting. I definitely wanted to pick it up. I didn't love this book, but I did think it was an interesting take on fairy tale retelling, and from what I hear, lots of her books actually have these sort of taking the themes from fairy tales or the tropes from fairy tales and sticking them in. So I'm looking forward to reading more of her books in the future.
So we hope that you've enjoyed our list, and I know just from listening to Michaela's half of this that I have some new books for my TBR, and we hope that you do too. If you've read any of the books that we mentioned and like them or dislike them, please let us know down in the comments. We'd love to talk to you about them. Or if you have any other retellings that we didn't mention that you think that both of us or either of us would like, also put those down there. A TBR is never too long. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!